Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Shelby Jo Long, CEO of Rogue Publishing Partners, and I'm joined here today by my fellow directors in Rogue Publishing Partners. I'll introduce them when we get into the discussion today, but we felt it was a really good time to reflect upon our year. And I think nothing is more appropriate than reflecting upon the best book or the best books that we've read this year, since we're starting to wrap up 2022, which is insane that 2022 is wrapping up. But here we go. I'm not going to lie. I think my favorite book this year is this one, the one that I published. Shameless plug about I See Your Genius, and everybody here was involved with that. But I enjoy, that was a fun book to write, fun book to begin promoting, and also a fun book to be a part of my business. But the favorite book that I read this year, I actually just read it recently for a book club, and it really stood out to me because it spoke to everything that is in my background. For everybody knows, I'm a communication professor, a college debate coach, and I've been that for 17 years. And I really like discussion of issues, and I like the back and forth. I like debating things and discovering all sides of things. And this book really fed that side of my soul, and I really enjoyed it. It's called I Never Thought of It That Way by Monica Guzman. And I listened to it on audiobook, and she just is a great storyteller and talks about her experience having very different political views than her parents, where she grew up in Seattle. And just really an interesting it really gets into like the basics of communication theory, is that we could talk over here about a lot of the things, but people over here don't necessarily hear it. And particularly in today's society, how challenging it is, how polarizing things have become. And it just gives us some tips about how to better engage. And yeah, if you're a Democrat, then listen to Republicans and vice versa, and then maybe find some common ground. And that's the way that we can move forward. Now, I just really enjoyed how she tied her own personal story and background into it, and how it's a discovery of something that is pervasive and that we see a lot in society. And it's just kind of fun to listen to someone talk about their experience with that. So I Never Thought of It that way by Monica Guzman. Not connected to the Rogue community, but it was something that stuck out to me. I think many people should read that book. It's a good thing to help broaden our perspectives, broaden our minds, and to not only speak, but to listen to each other. So I enjoyed that book. Fed my debate side, it fed my communication side, but then also talked about a very relevant topic. So those are my top two books of 2022. Those are the ones that stood out to me, mine and then Monica Guzman's book. So Scott Sery, fellow director here on Rogue Publishing Partners, introduce yourself and tell us about your favorite book of the year or books of the year.
Sure. I'm Scott Sery. I'm a ghostwriter and a copywriter. So most of my time is spent creating the books and creating the words that goes into them. Looking back over the year, I can't really pinpoint one book that I loved more than others. I joined a book club. I've never been a part of a book club. I always just kind of have been reading whatever looked interesting to me. So I always have a big list of books. I don't think you can see them there's a shelf back over here, and I have them lined up. So the one on the right hand side is the next one that I have to read, and then I alternate a fiction and a nonfiction, so I'm not always reading one particular genre. But in this book club, we put a name of a book, drop it in the hat, and then we just randomly draw it out. And there's about 8 of us in the group, 8 to 10 of us that actually show up every time, and we read whatever those people wanted to pick. And so there was like a romance novel in there. There was a fiction one called Counting Coup. It's about life on the Crow Reservation, following along a high school athlete. She's a basketball player, and just kind of her story. She's like the best player in the state. But
I love that book. It's so good.
Yeah. The dynamics of living on the reservation and the culture took her from, she's like the best player ever, and she just makes nothing of her life because everything going on around her. So I don't know, maybe that would be kind of my favorite one. It was a little bit harder to read, but it was fun because it took place just down the street from us here in Billings, 30 miles away, 40 miles away. But then there's just all these different genres, all these different types of books that I never would have thought to read. So anyone that's thinking about joining a book club, do it, because it breaks you out of your little mold of what you fall into and what you love to read, and it broadens your horizons a bit.
Oh, Scott, that's a great tip. It does, yeah. Being a part of a book club and not picking out what's on your shelf to read and challenging yourself out to get outside of that. I read that Counting Coup a while ago. Local author, I think. It's a great book.
He's out of Portland. He followed Sharon LaForge around in 1992 and just kind of tracked the whole girls basketball team throughout that basketball season. And then it took him 7 or 8 years to actually write the book, because he kept running into issues. He kept debating himself, should I even publish this? It was a little controversial because it doesn't depict the reservation life in very good, in a sunshiny manner, but it depicts it in a real manner. It's how it actually is, and it's not pleasant to read sometimes.
Right. Man, that's a good one for those that want to discover more. Crow Reservation, right 30 miles from here. It's crazy. So that's great. Well, yeah, and join a book club. There's a good piece of advice for 2023.
What was that called, Scott?
Counting Coup.
Counting Coup.
Larry Colton is the author. A true story of basketball and honor on the Little Bighorn.
Cool.
There's actually quite a few. There's another book. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's like a world champion basketball team out of Three Forks or something in Montana. Like there's quite a few of those stories about the reservations in Montana. That's really interesting. So great tip for 2023 and good book. Fellow director, Michelle White. Michelle, can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your favorite book or books of 2022?
Okay, I am Michelle White, like you said. I own MMW Books. I'm a book designer. So I'm always looking at covers and scrolling through new books and like the New York Times, articles on right now there's a lot of them, best books of the year kind of stuff. I'm always looking through the covers and looking at trends in cover design and what really pops out to me and that kind of thing. But when I'm reading the books, I read a lot of nonfiction, nature, conservation, those kind of things, spiritual, like Eckhart Tolle. I just started reading Joan Tollefson, who apparently has been around since like the 1960s, writing on spiritual things like her evolution. Alan Watts, people like that. I'm just a big fan of that kind of writing. When I'm reading fiction, I try to read books that take me outside of my own life, people that I wouldn't ordinarily be able to relate to. Like currently I'm reading Solito, which is it's from the perspective of a boy from El Salvador migrating to California to be with his parents, and he's 9 years old. So it's really interesting. It was the 90s that he made this trek. So, things like that I really like reading about. My favorite one of the year was Bewilderment by Richard Powers. It's about a father and his son, and it's fiction. The son is experiencing problems in school. He's like super intelligent, and he's really concerned about endangered species, and he paints pictures of them, and he tries to do a protest. He stands on the courthouse steps and trying to protest, I don't know, something to do with endangered species. I forget what it was, and gets in trouble for it and all this. And it's just how the father deals with it. The mother had recently died, before the book started. So they're dealing with that. And they're doing this neurofeedback thing that's supposed to help with the boy's emotion. It's a new sort of a science fiction like technology that the boy is going through, and it's it's just bizarre, the effects that it has on him, and it creates this big, all-knowing kind of like enlightenment kind of thing in this little boy, which it's bizarre, but it's really, really, really good. Anything by Richard Powers, I've been onto him lately. He's a lot of nature and science and climate change and all this, all in fictionalized, form, but dealing with those subjects.
Fiction or nonfiction? So that's
It's fiction.
Yeah, that's interesting. Takes you to kind of a different perspective. That's
right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
and I'm starting a Toni Morrison kick. I saw an interview that she did, and I just fell in love with her as a person,
Yeah.
And so I had read Beloved back in school. So I'm working my way through those. I'm going to start Sula next. So
yeah,
really
Toni
like
Morrison's great. I read Beloved. It's been a while though, so it'd be good to get back into those books.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, the only consistent author I read is a romance novelist, which is also nonfiction. But I maybe need to get out of my comfort zone and explore some of this. That sounds really interesting. Those two authors. So thank you, Michelle. Susie, fellow Rogue director, talk about your favorite book or books of the year in the publishing industry. I'm sure you see quite a few of them.
Yeah, I do. I'm Susie Schaefer. I'm founder of Finish the Book Publishing and COO for Rogue Publishing Partners. And, my challenge is that there are too many books and not enough time. So, and this is why literally when I'm working on books, I will read bits and pieces, but I may not read the entire book from cover to cover. So some of my favorites from this year, and actually I've got 4 that are authors that I worked with, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the others. So the first one is I See Your Genius by Shelby, because I love the story and I love the fact that while it's a nonfiction book and really focuses on your journey into becoming an entrepreneur and leaving academia, but it also tells your story, which is really important because that's how you connect to people. And then of course, I just can't make
shout out, Susie.
Oh, you're welcome.
My publisher.
You're welcome.
And my book designer. So thank you.
But I haven't read the whole thing like beginning to end. So it's on my list of to-dos. And you know what I'm going to do actually, Shelby, is I'm going to actually wait until it's on audiobook, because at the end of the day, when I'm tired of seeing a screen or reading, I love to listen to audiobooks. And I think that that's what I'm going to do with yours. I'm going to wait till it's on audiobook and then listen to the whole thing start to finish. Another one that I absolutely love.
The audiobook is coming.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, it is. Okay.
thanks, David Wolf, for showing up
Hey,
today.
it's
So-
we're here. Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay. Another one of my favorites is I Just Can't Make This Shit Up by Alejandra Brady, who talks about her. And that, like, for me, it's one of my favorite covers of the book. But that one really talks about her own spiritual awakening. So I love that, and how her spiritual awakening was impacted by her family and their opinions. So fascinating book. Another one that just really, struck my heart was 7 Stories for My Father by Estela Nunez Franco. She wrote this book because her father had terminal cancer, and she wanted to make sure that she wrote him love letters before he passed. And so she wrote it, and then she also translated it, so it's available in both English and Spanish. So really, really beautiful book, and it's a little short book. The one that I'm working on right now with a lot of my other road partners too, and it's coming out very soon. We're just doing the finals on it. It's called Fence Bat, a big kid's guide to parenting, personal growth, and play. So it's the word fence and the word bat combined to create Fence Bat, which is a game that his kids created during the pandemic. And he also discovered during the pandemic, when the kids were home, that his son was on the autism spectrum. So fascinating book, excellent writing. It's going to be super duper. So write that one down, because you're going to want to watch for that one. So what I'm reading right now currently is A Guide to Lucid Dreaming. I get really into the metaphysical space and the woo-woo space and spirituality, and it's something that I love. It's something that I incorporated into my business when I'm working with authors. So that's what I'm reading right now. On my list is To Kill a Mockingbird, because I'm seeing the performance in January and I don't remember the story. So I said, okay, I'm going to read the book before I go to the show. So that's on my next list. And I should just give a quick shout out too. For those of you that are looking for books that were worked on by Rogue partners, you should check out the Rogue bookshelf on our website, because we are in the process of uploading books that at least 2 members of the team have worked on. So there will be a whole bunch of books listed there that have been a collaboration of our services for those authors, and also just to highlight the good work that our authors do. So check out the Rogue bookshelf on the Rogue Publishing Partners website. That's my plug.
Great, Susie. Thanks for all that. You gave us a couple of book recommendations. To Kill a Mockingbird, we read that many, many moons ago. Time to get back into that one. Excited about that. Yeah, those are some great recommendations. And the Rogue bookshelf, it's always important to have that too. Speaking of our expanded Rogue community, and David joined the podcast late, but I told him I was going to call on him anyway in the last few minutes of the interview. David, we're talking about our favorite books of 2022. What stood out to you this year? What book recommendations can you make?
Oh my gosh, I'm being called on something let's see.
And David,
I wasn't prepared.
Introduce yourself quickly before
Sure. So my company is Audiovita Studios, and we produce audiobooks and podcasts. So that's our business, and that's my business. We're about 4-year-old startup, and I'm a longtime music producer. So kind of moved into this business some years ago and started podcasting back in 2006. Anyway, oh my gosh, I think I may come up dry because there's so many, and I wasn't really prepared to recommend anything. And also it's a memory moment. So I just have to, sorry, I'll think about it. And
okay.
Maybe a future podcast, I don't want to waste time here, but a future podcast, I'll come back and make some recommendations, because I have done a lot of reading this year. I'm not recalling things in the moment.
Done a lot of reading and probably recorded a lot of them too. So
Indeed.
I'm looking forward to recording my audiobook here with you in the next month or so. So it's going to be great.
Hey, Shelby, can I make one more comment too?
Please.
I think it's really important that we highlight the fact that all of us are what we call hybrid readers. So we may read a physical book. I love taking a physical book, like when I go to the beach. But we also read, for example, on our e-readers. So, Kindle, Nook, whatever, sometimes even on our laptops or on our phones. But, David serves he provides a great service, because so many books we are now listening to as audiobooks. So when you're reading on these different types of medias, it's important that we do fill that niche. And so I was super excited to hear that Shelby's going to be recording her audiobook with David, because we have to be able to kind of ebb and flow for the type of reading that we want to do. And I've said before that at the end of the day, I'm tired of looking at a screen, looking at a book, at reading, because I do it all day long. So I like to just kind of chill out and listen to audiobooks. And so that's my end of day kind of routine. So, a big shout out to David, because what he does, it kind of brings everything full circle for those that are working on their book, whether it's a physical book, an ebook, or an audiobook.
And if I may, I remembered one of the books that I actually did listen to. It was Jim Doty, Into the Magic Shop. He's an amazing guy. He's a neurosurgeon with a heck of a story, unbelievable story. And it's available in all the formats per Susie, which she was just talking about. I did happen to listen to it. So that's a great one. Another author that I checked out recently, this is historical fiction set in World War II by Steve Hartov. And it has to do with, it's called I believe the title is The Last Seven. And I'm Jewish, so he came through my wife, who runs a book fest every year. And he wrote a book about these these men that survived the Holocaust and then went back into Germany to basically get revenge as part of a mission, a British mission. So amazing author, and anybody who does historical fiction, I don't know how you do that. It's so amazing. Anyway, that's my two. I wanted to pay back and bring some of value to this podcast since you did a shout out. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Always great to know that we provide every service that you need in Rogue Publishing Partners, whether it's recording your book, getting your book designed, getting it published, or even ghostwritten, and whatever you want to do with it as far as your brand strategy afterwards. So this was a great conversation today. Good way to wrap up 2022. Always good to, I have a new list of books that I need to read or listen to over the break, and I'm looking forward to the next time. So we'll talk to you next time when the Rogue Publishing Partners give you some insight into the publishing industry. See you next time.